A high school student asked for her history assignment. Who's the oldest veteran in our neighborhood? The answer was walking the school hallways with a mop in his hands, a 78-year-old man. And his story was one that made the entire school cry. When that student asked the question, teachers looked at each other. Who was the oldest person at school? The assistant principal was 65, the math teacher was 62. Then someone remembered Mr. Walter. He'd been quietly working these school hallways for 45 years, a janitor whose name nobody really knew. But when that student saw the old photograph in Walter's locker, she realized he wasn't just a janitor. That young soldier, standing in the snow-covered Korean mountains, carrying his wounded friends with frozen hands, was now standing right in front of them. And Walter had a story to tell, a story he hadn't shared with anyone for 68 years. Hello, and welcome to The Last Stand. Do you have family members who served in the Korean War or other conflicts? Please share their stories with us in the comments. Walter Anderson had been working as a janitor at Lincoln High School for 45 years. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, every evening at 8 p.m. Never complained, never showed up late, never talked much either. Students knew him as Mr. Walter. He had a kind smile, but his eyes always carried a deep sadness, like he was looking at everything from someplace very far away. Walter was 78 years old. He walked with a slight stoop now. His hands shook sometimes. But he still did his job with the same care. Every classroom, every hallway, he cleaned like it was his own home. Nobody knew where he came from. Was he married? Did he have children? These questions were never asked. He was just Mr. Walter, part of the school, always there, but never really noticed. Emily Carter was 17, and history was her favorite subject. Mr. Blank and VDU, 40 and end. Davies had given them a special Veterans Day project. Find elderly veterans in your neighborhood, learn their stories. Emily was excited about this. Her grandfather had served in Vietnam, but he died before Emily was born. This project was her chance to connect with her grandfather's memory. Who's the oldest veteran in our neighborhood? She'd asked Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies thought about it. You know, I never really considered that. Maybe the oldest person at school? Who's the oldest person at school? That's when the teachers started looking at each other. The assistant principal was 65. The math teacher was 62. Then someone remembered Mr. Walter. Emily found Walter in the hallway and hesitated. The man was so quiet, maybe he'd be uncomfortable. Mr. Walter? She said tentatively. Walter stopped and smiled. Yes, sweetheart. I'm Emily. For a history project. Did you ever serve in the military? Walter's face changed. The smile disappeared. His eyes went distant. There was a long silence. Why are you asking, sweetheart? Veterans Day project. I'm looking for the oldest veteran. Mr. Davies said it might be you. Walter gripped his mop tightly. I'm just a janitor. But you did other work before, didn't you? Walter nodded slowly. Long time ago. Doesn't matter anymore. Emily persisted. It matters to me. Please? The next day, Emily came back. This time, she found Walter in the janitor's closet. The door was open. Walter was getting something from his locker. Emily waited at the door when something caught her attention. On the inside of the locker door was an old photograph, black and white, edges yellowed with age. The photo showed a young soldier standing in snow-covered mountains. He held a rifle, had a serious expression on his face, but that face, it looked familiar. Mr. Walter? Emily said in surprise. Is that you in this picture? Walter turned around. When he saw what Emily was looking at, he froze. He'd kept that photograph there for 68 years. That's me from long ago. When was this taken? Walter took the photograph, his hands trembling. 1950. In Korea. Korea? You served in the Korean War? Walter lowered his head. Yes, but I don't talk about those days. Emily didn't give up. She came every day, talked with Walter. First, they talked about everyday things, then slowly began returning to the past. How old were you when you enlisted? 18. Signed up in 1949. Got training first, then they sent me to Korea in 1950. Were you scared? Walter laughed, but it was a sad laugh. You bet I was scared. We all were. But I had my buddies. I tried to be strong for them. Your buddies? Walter's eyes went distant again. Bobby Fletcher. He was my closest friend. We called him Hawk. Real good shot. Is he a janitor now too? Walter's face crumpled. No, sweetheart. Bobby didn't make it home. Emily could feel Walter's pain. If you don't want to talk about it. No, Walter said. Maybe it's time I told someone. Walter slowly began to tell the story. About Bobby Fletcher, how he met him, their friendship. Bobby was from Texas. Real funny guy, always making jokes. Even in the darkest moments he'd make us laugh. He was 19, had his mother and little sister back home. You were close friends. Like brothers. We shared the same tent, ate the same food. When he cleaned his rifle, I'd write letters. When I stood watch, he'd sleep. Walter's voice began to break. Bobby always believed he'd make it home. Walter, he'd say, I'm gonna get out of this war and buy a big ranch in Texas. You're gonna come too, we'll work it together. So what happened? Walter was quiet for a long time. Chosin Reservoir happened. What's Chosin Reservoir? Emily asked. Walter took a deep breath. One of the bloodiest battles of the Korean War. November 1950. The Chinese had us surrounded. When Walter started talking, it was like he was returning to those days. It was so cold, 30 below zero. Fingers freezing, rifles jamming. But worse than that, the Chinese army had us surrounded on all sides. How many of you were there? Our unit was 200 men, but there were thousands of Chinese soldiers around us. Radio contact was cut, no reinforcements coming. Walter's eyes began to moisten. Bobby was real nervous that night. He kept talking about Texas. Walter, he said, what if I don't make it home? My mom will be all alone. What did you tell him? I promised him, Bobby, we're both going home. I'm gonna get you home. But I couldn't keep that promise. Walter's voice started shaking. Emily's eyes were tearing up too. December 3rd, the attack started. Thousands of Chinese soldiers surrounded the hill. We were down to just 30 men. You must have been terrified. Fear didn't matter anymore. We were just trying to stay alive. Bobby was right next to me. We dug the foxhole together. Walter stopped, covered his face with his hands. If you don't want to continue. No, I have to tell this. I've been carrying it inside for 68 years. Walter took a deep breath. The Chinese soldiers started climbing the hill. Bobby was doing real good shooting with his rifle. He was protecting me. Then what happened? Then a grenade exploded, right next to Bobby. Walter was crying now. Emily was crying too. Was Bobby wounded? Walter nodded. Real bad. His leg, his stomach. He was losing so much blood. You tried to save him. Of course I did. I got him on my back. Started down that hill, but there were Chinese soldiers everywhere. Walter's voice broke. Bobby kept getting heavier. He kept telling me, Walter, leave me. You run. Did you leave him? Never. I'd given him my word. I was going to get him home. Walter stood up, started pacing around the room. I carried him for 3 hours. Snow was falling, my feet were frozen, but I didn't let go. And Bobby. Bobby died on the way. In my arms, in the snow. His last words were, tell my mother and sister I loved them. Emily was crying. So was Walter. I couldn't save him, Walter said. I'd promised him, but you did everything you could. It wasn't enough. Bobby was supposed to meet his family. He was going to buy that ranch. He died because of me. Because of you? How? Walter shook his head. I was on watch that night. I spotted the attack too late. Maybe if I'd seen it earlier. Mr. Walter, this wasn't your fault. I've lived with this for 68 years. That's why I never told anyone. That's why I stayed quiet. Emily took Walter's hand. But you're a hero. You carried Bobby for 3 hours. You didn't abandon him. Walter shook his head. Heroes save their friends. I couldn't save mine. That evening, Emily went home, but Walter's story wouldn't leave her mind. She started researching Chosin Reservoir on the internet. Everything she read confirmed what Walter had told her. That battle really was one of the toughest battles of the Korean War. Thousands of soldiers had died. Emily researched the Honest Infantry Division records. She found Walter Anderson's name. Next to it was written, Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart. Bronze Star, Purple Heart? Emily researched these too. These were very important medals, medals for heroism. The next day she ran to school. Mr. Walter, Emily called out in the hallway. Walter turned around. Yes, sweetheart? You have medals, Bronze Star and Purple Heart? Walter's face changed. How do you know about that? I researched it. You're a hero. These medals are very important. Walter shook his head. Those medals belong to Bobby. I don't deserve them. But you received them. They were given to you because you earned them. Walter quietly walked away. But Emily didn't give up. Emily told Mr. Talfrace Davies about the situation. The history teacher was shocked. Walter Anderson? Our Walter? Yes, he served in the Korean War. He received the Bronze Star. Mr. Davies thought about it. Emily, this is very important. But apparently Walter doesn't want this. His story needs to be heard. Students should know. You're right, but we can't force it. We need Walter's permission. Together they went to find Walter. Walter, Mr. Davies said, Emily told me your story. Walter lowered his head. There's nothing to tell. On the contrary, there's a lot to tell. You're a hero. Heroes don't lose their friends. Mr. Davies stepped closer. Walter, your story could inspire students. They could learn what real heroism is. I'm just a janitor. Emily stepped in. No, you're Walter Anderson, from the 1st Infantry Division, Bronze Star recipient, and you're my hero. Walter looked at Emily. In the young girl's eyes was genuine respect. Sweetheart, please, Mr. Walter, for Bobby's memory, let his story be told too. Walter was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay. Mr. Davies and Emily began preparing for the Veterans Day presentation. Walter was reluctant at first, but slowly began to warm up. Do you have a picture of Bobby? Emily asked. Walter took it from his locker. Bobby's photo was also from Korea, taken next to Walter. He looked so young, Emily said. He was 19. Just a kid, really. Emily looked at the photo. Did he have family too? His mother, Martha Fletcher, little sister Susan. They lived in Texas. Did you ever contact them? Walter shook his head. How could I face them? How could I tell them they'd lost their son, their brother? But you tried to save him. It wasn't enough. Veterans Day morning, Walter came to school early. He was very nervous. For the first time in 68 years, he was going to tell his story. Emily was waiting for him. Are you ready, Mr. Walter? I don't know. Maybe this is a mistake. No, this is the right thing to do. Bobby's story needs to be heard. Students began filling the auditorium. Walter couldn't believe he was going to get on that stage. Mr. Davies took the microphone. Students, today we have a very special guest. Someone who's been among us for 45 years, but whose story we never knew. Walter Anderson. Applause. Walter walked onto the stage, very nervous. I'm just a janitor, he began. But a long time ago, I had a different job. I was a soldier. The auditorium fell silent. In 1950, I was sent to Korea. I was 18 years old, your age. Walter showed Bobby's photograph. This is my closest friend, Bobby Fletcher. He was 19 too. Walter told the whole story. Chosin Reservoir, that terrible night, Bobby's death. The auditorium was silent. Many students were crying. I blamed myself for 68 years, Walter said, because I couldn't save Bobby. But Emily taught me that what matters is trying, not giving up on Bobby. He was my brother, and I never gave up on him. Applause erupted. The entire auditorium was on its feet, clapping. When the applause died down, Mr. Davies took the microphone again. Walter, we have a surprise for you. A side door on the stage opened. An elderly woman walked in her 80s with white hair. When Walter saw her, he froze. Susan Fletcher, the woman said. Bobby's sister. Walter couldn't believe it. Susan, you. I've been looking for you for 68 years, Walter. You were the only person who knew Bobby's final moments. Susan walked onto the stage, hugged Walter. Both were crying. Mom died, Susan said. But before she passed, she always talked about Bobby. How you wanted to bring him home. I couldn't save him. But you didn't abandon him, that's what matters most. Bobby didn't die alone. His brother was with him. Walter was sobbing now. 68 years of pain was pouring out. Because of you, he didn't suffer, Susan said. You made him feel like he was home. Susan took a box from her purse. These are Bobby's medals, Purple Heart and Bronze Star, but I want you to have them. No, those are Bobby's. Bobby's not with us anymore, but you are. And these medals are part of your story. Susan pinned the medals on Walter's chest. Now you look like the hero you are, she said. The auditorium went wild. Students, teachers, everyone was crying and applauding. Principal Foster walked onto the stage. Walter Anderson, for 45 years, you weren't just a janitor. You were our hero, and you always will be. Foster held up a plaque, Lincoln High School Walter Anderson Veteran Memorial Hall. From now on, this hallway will carry your name. After the ceremony, students surrounded Walter. Everyone wanted to talk with him. Mr. Walter, are you really a hero? No, sweetheart. I just did my job. But you tried to save Bobby. I did it for my friend. You would do the same for your friends. One student asked, Are you ever scared? I'm always scared. But courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what's right, even when you're scared. From that day on, Walter's life changed. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was the school's hero. When students saw him in the hallway, they greeted him with respect. They wanted to hear his stories. Walter had changed too. The 68 years of silence were over. Now he talked, smiled, shared his life. Emily came to see him every day. Will you tell us about Bobby today? And Walter would tell stories. About Bobby's jokes, his dreams, his Texas ranch plans. Months passed. Walter's story spread throughout the city. Newspapers wrote about it. TV stations covered it. But the most important change was inside Walter himself. He no longer blamed himself for Bobby's death. Susan Fletcher had also moved to the city. She and Walter met often, talking about Bobby. Bobby would be proud of you, Susan would say. You told his story. You kept him alive. The school opened a special museum corner for Walter. Bobby's photograph, the medals, items he'd brought from Korea were displayed. Every Veterans Day, they held a new ceremony. Walter would tell his story, giving students lessons about courage and friendship. Heroism isn't about doing great things, he would say. It's about doing what's right at the right time. One day, Emily asked, Mr. Walter, what would you want to tell young people? Walter thought about it. Never abandon your friends. No matter how hard it gets, stand by them. You never forgot Bobby. And I never will. He was my brother. Brothers don't forget each other. Walter looked at Emily. You became a sister to Bobby too. You kept his story alive. Today, Walter Anderson still works at Lincoln High School, but he's not just a janitor anymore. He's the school's hero, the student's mentor, the person who carries Bobby Fletcher's voice. And every morning when he comes to work, he sees the Walter Anderson Memorial Hall sign in the hallway. After 68 years of silence, Walter's voice was heard, and that voice carries a message of hope, courage, and friendship. Bobby Fletcher's memory lives on. Walter Anderson's heroism is recognized. If you enjoyed this powerful story, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We'll continue sharing hero stories like this with you every day. As Walter said, never abandon your friends. Because true heroism isn't about doing great things, it's about doing what's right at the right time.